Welcome to Insights into a Soul, the podcast that no one asked for. This is a podcast about life, love, and everything in between. So grab a cup of coffee and relax, and join me as we gain insights into a soul. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Insights into a Soul, the podcast that no one asked for. But here it is. Here it is again. We're back. Back again this time with Jeff.
Hello.
Hey, Jeff. He's back for another episode. If you missed it, make sure you check out the episode he was on before. It was an episode about friendship. Because Jeff and I have been friends for a long time.
Just a few minutes.
Just a few.
I'm baffled by the fact that our levels aren't showing up on the right side of your recording software.
It's weird, but it's fine. Because they're obviously there because we can see the waveforms.
Yep.
So.
Well, hello.
Hey.
Thanks for having me for
General Kenobi.
Hello there. General Kenobi.
We're nerds.
Yep.
That's a lot of Star Wars.
That's part of why we're such good friends.
But we're not talking about friendship today, are we, Jeff?
No, we're not.
To get a little bit more serious.
Talking about how we failed at opening this episode intro.
Failed. That's not the only thing we failed at.
No, not at all.
We're going to talk about failure. Because I think, for the longest time, I know that failure was not something I was okay with. I had to learn over years that failure is okay.
Failure is something most people aren't okay with. Most people are terrified of failure.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the first time that I really failed was, I would say, when I got let go from a job that I had about 12 years ago. It was 2008, so 11 years ago.
Yeah.
It was 2008, right in the housing crash. I had started at a church, and the economy went south. I was the only person in my department because I was helping them build a video department.
Yeah.
And so to save money, they cut me because I was one of the easiest things on the sheet to cut. I had moved from Florida to Charleston for this job, so uprooted my entire life, my family at the time. I think I'd been married for, just months.
Yeah.
And we moved. And so for me, my life was pretty good. I had a lot of success, did well, and kind of rose in the ranks at places that I worked. And this was my first time really failing, I guess, at something, even though it wasn't my fault.
Right.
I still failed, and I took it really hard. And I was already dealing, I think, with some personal identity crises and things like that I didn't really see until later in life. But adding that to it, I didn't recover from it in a healthy way.
Yeah. I
let it affect me. I let it kind of drag me down. And because I was a winner. I mean, growing up, you didn't fail. You didn't, you get good grades. You do well. You're successful. You succeed. And so I never knew really what it was like to experience failure or to not do something great or do something well. I don't want to sound like everything I did was amazing, but you know what I mean? It's just things just went well. I was fortunate. And I guess I was never taught how to deal with failing.
I've been failing for a little longer than you.
Most of my life, I've been failing.
I actually remembered, the first class that I ever failed was in, 5th grade. The first thing that I ever truly failed at was in, 5th grade. And at that time, I was going through a lot of other things. It sounds like 5th grade, such an early time to deal with things. But at that time, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, I was bullied relentlessly in school. And for me, I didn't know how to process what was going on. And so I just kind of started pulling into myself and just decided I didn't want to do school. I didn't want to put in the effort in what I was doing because school is where all of the abuse was coming from, was all these kids who kept picking on me. And so that was really hard for me, and so I ended up failing, specifically my French class, of all classes. And so that was kind of my first introduction into failure, and my parents, I love them, Mom and Dad, you guys are awesome. You definitely poured into me so much, but a lot of it was a high bar that I think is very difficult to achieve when you've got other things going on in the background. And it was always you can be better. Look at what Timothy is doing. Look at what Paul is doing. Look at what, Frank is doing. Look at what all these other people are doing.
Sorry, I was like, were your brothers the apostles? Timothy and Paul. Look at
Frank.
what Jesus is doing. Come on, Jeff.
But it was kids around me that my parents actually kind of compared me to, and it was like I felt like a failure because I wasn't living up to, and I wasn't getting the same grades. I wasn't going through, but I was going through something very different than they were. They weren't teased, they weren't harassed, they weren't picked on, they weren't being abused in the same way. Now, I'm not trying to make myself a martyr here and be like, oh, woe is me. I pulled myself out of it. After time, my dad taught me a lot of things through that, and I had to deal with it. But failure has actually marked a large portion of my life. Failure has been something that I've gone through quite a bit. And I think the problem is, you have to look at it one of two ways. You either look at the failure as a result of you making the effort, and the effort just didn't pan out, and you learn something from it. And you take that as, okay, I'm going to celebrate this failure because I learned a way not to do something, or because I learned something that didn't work. And you can take that and turn it around and say, okay, well, next time I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do something better. You always learn more from your failures. The other side is the failure of just not trying, just slacking off, being a jackass, not fucking doing anything, and just sitting back and letting the world pass you by, which is another form of failure that I've also experienced, and thank God I have broken from. That was my college days, my early college years. I actually failed out of my first college because I just was like, yo, screw this. I partied. I did stupid shit. It was bad. I failed hard there. But the other places where I failed besides that was like with my career, similar type thing.
Yeah.
I worked at a church. My boss basically told me, hey, we don't like you. I don't like you. I'm never promoting you. I'm never giving you a pay raise. Deal with it. And that made me feel like a horrible failure, because it was like, well, what did I do wrong that, he would feel this way about me? How did I fail in my job, in my responsibilities, and in my duties that this person would tell me that I'm doing so bad that I'll never excel in my chosen career field? And this is the first job I had out of college with my degree.
So it's your first real experience in the world with your...
in the workforce.
What your skills had been training you for.
With my passion, with what I loved. And that actually took a long time to kind of heal from. And I'll never forget that, it was kind of at that moment that, and I had only been married for a couple of months at the point where this had happened. I looked at my wife and I was like, I can't stay here anymore. I can't do this job anymore. And that was very, very tough on me. But the decision was at that point, if I am such a failure, can I afford to make a change? Can I afford to try and go somewhere else and do this? Can I afford to, if I'm that bad at what I'm doing, can I actually go out and do something different or do something better for myself, for my family? And it turns out it took me a little while. It took me a year and a half afterwards to actually realize that, yes, I can, because it wasn't really me who failed in that one. It was actually my boss that failed on that one. But I was unemployed for a year and a half after that. And I left that job with nothing lined up. Guys, don't do that. Don't leave a job when you're the sole breadwinner and have nothing lined up. That was a failure in of itself. That was just dumb.
Not smart.
No, I did not plan that one out at all. But my wife stood by me through that decision, because she knew that, God, this is almost becoming like a story of abuse instead of failure. She knew that my boss was not treating me well, and that I had to get out of there so that I didn't, fall into a depression or something like that. So I didn't start to look at myself and say wow, how bad are you?
That's I'm already hearing another episode that we can do where we just talk about leadership and, stuff like that, because that's a challenge in that, because I've worked for some bosses that only tell you what you do wrong.
Yeah.
And they don't tell you how you could do better. Hey, you're not doing great. Well, why? I just do better. Well, how do I do better? I don't know. Do better. Not even getting that much, but so that's a whole another episode that we can get into.
That is a whole nother episode. And so that was one of those early failures in my career in a professional sense. So that was kind of hard to deal with. And then shortly after that is when I met you, which was Again, go back, listen to the Friends episode of Friendly Soul or whatever title Torn throws on that thing. But that was really difficult because then for the next year and a half, I also felt like a failure because I couldn't find a job. I couldn't find anything that would actually be a paycheck that would help us survive, that would help us get by as a newlywed. That was a really, really stressful situation that I felt like I was failing as like the man of the house, you know. Mm-hmm. Here in America, especially, we think like the man is supposed to provide. The man is, Of course, we're getting more even footing where, you know, we've got strong, independent women, and I love that. But it was still very much that intrinsic thing of like, I'm the man. I should be providing for my wife. I should be providing for my family. And then finally, you know, that came around and I got a new job and things went really well. And failure came again. Failure came again when I had another boss who passed me over for a promotion. And I wouldn't have been mad if somebody else got promoted. I think Torn knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep. As soon as you looked at me, it's like, oh, yeah, we locked eyes, and it's like, yes.
Yes. There is one singular person, i.e. Torn, who should have been promoted to this position that somebody else was promoted to. And it again felt like I had failed, but not only myself, but like my friend and my boss had all failed at the same time. And it was just weird living in that moment of failure and then to, again, have to make a very difficult decision. Yeah. And like I said, I've been very fortunate to have a wife who's always stood by my side and who's always supported me in these tough decisions to say, look, we need to do what's right. We need to do what's right for you. And that's when I took on to leaving another position for another unknown where I got licensed as a mortgage loan originator, having zero financial background whatsoever. My degree's in film and film production, and I went out to be a loan officer. That was dumb.
Well, I don't think it was dumb. I mean, it was a challenge. You challenge yourself in a new way, and listen, I think one thing that I know that you've communicated as you've learned over the years since you've come back is that, like, that's not an easy job.
No.
Especially in the market that you were in. It's a very saturated market with a lot of competition, even within the same company. But the thing is, like, for you, more so that one, like, you needed to give it more time that you weren't able to.
Yes.
Like, you spent a good year building a network and connections, and it was interesting because once you came back, because he came back to the video world and now works with me. Again. But within the first 4 months of you coming back, you had so many people contacting you, ready to do business with you.
Yep.
So just unfortunately for you, you didn't have the funds to be able to stick it out longer. I think if you would have stuck it out for another year, you would have seen a massive difference in return.
I dove into that career in the worst year since the housing market crash of 2008.
Yeah.
It was the worst year in mortgage financing since 2008. And it happened to be the one year that I chose to go head first, all in on being a loan originator. Yeah. And I still closed, actually, a decent amount. I maintained status quo is what
there you go.
I found out as I maintained status quo for an annual average mortgage loan originator.
And that, I would say, it wasn't even a failure in that. Because, again, you just didn't have the reserve funds. Because that's the thing. If you're going to be a loan officer, it's one thing to tell you is have, like, multiple years of income saved up.
Yeah, you need to have 2 to 3 years as a starting out mortgage loan originator to be able to say, like, okay, I'm stable. I have the time to build my book of business. I can do this.
Yeah, we for a long time, we still do. We give you grief about it. You know, Jeff, the failed LO.
Yep.
You know, we talk about your failed LO career in a joking way because it really wasn't a failure. I mean, obviously, you see it as a failure for yourself because you weren't able to get to where you wanted to be. You had goals, you had, you know, milestones set for yourself that you just weren't able to achieve.
Yeah.
Not because of lack of trying or your ability, just because it just didn't work. It's that challenging world.
It was outside circumstances that caused that.
And I think that's an important thing to learn is that there's different types of failure. And you're going to fail sometimes because of other people. You're going to fail sometimes because of your own shortcomings.
Yep.
You're going to fail because of other factors out there. Just the things like that, like with the LO. There's factors you can't control.
Absolutely.
And I think the big thing about it is that I didn't see you beat yourself up because you didn't achieve the success you could have or wanted to. You failed in your eyes because you had set certain goals for yourself and you weren't able to achieve those goals.
Yeah.
Now, like, people have told you, you met the status quo. You met the standard.
Yeah.
So you did good.
I
Especially
was
for your first year.
Average.
Yeah.
And as a first year, that's incredible.
Yes. Yeah.
That I have found out later that one of our market leaders told me, it's like, I have guys who come in first year, no prior business, no prior knowledge of the business, who takes them 2 years to close a single loan. And I closed 7 in essentially 9 months.
Yeah.
Which was awesome, which was great to hear, which means I was doing something right. I know I was.
You were on the right track.
Yeah, and I could have stuck it. If I had stuck it out, I know what I would have done better. But then I also have to ask myself the question is, how much would I have grown to resent what I was doing at that point?
Yeah.
Because, we all have a passion. Everybody has a passion. Whether you know what it is or not, you have a passion. It's somewhere in you. And what I was doing was not my passion, which was, again, in and of itself, another failure.
Yeah.
I was failing myself in that aspect where, I enjoyed what I was doing. I enjoyed talking to people, but I had killed the creative side of myself to go into this. And that was letting myself down and not being who I knew I could be. I wasn't being true to myself.
Yeah. That's important. I think a lot of people do that. I think that's a very common thing. But getting to a point where you're aware of that is important.
Yeah.
That you can say to yourself, you know what? I'm not being fulfilled in what I'm doing. Because at that point, if you're not fulfilled in what you're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing, the people you work for a disservice. You're just, it's not harmony. It's not everything working great together. So we can shift gears and talk about failure in another aspect. So that's failure in failing yourself as far as your goals. Not really failing business, but you did like other experiences before, like failing a job.
Yep.
But again, outside circumstances, but not becoming a victim of your circumstances.
Exactly.
Not sitting there saying, oh my gosh, if only this person would have done this differently, I could be here. Yeah, sure, great. You can speculate all day. So let's shift into another mode of failure.
Yeah.
And talk about relationship failure. So this is a big one for me. As you know from my first episode, just kind of filling everybody in on what's going on. I was married for about 13 years. I was with my wife, and just one day she, it was a long time coming, but she decided she wasn't happy anymore and she wanted to move on. And after she left, it happened very quickly. The point at which she told me she had made the decision to the point at which she left was all within 3 days. So that was very difficult. So for the first little bit, a lot of questions come flooding in. A lot of, as I said before, introspection and analyzing. And I'm a very analytical person. I overanalyze. I'm also the type of person, my personality, my INFJ or whatever it is, I'm the type of person that takes a small criticism or something like that, and I think on it. I spin on it. I dwell on it. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? How could I have done this differently? So I started out thinking my marriage failed. My marriage failed, and then I start looking at all the years of everything I did wrong. Because let's be honest, we don't, we can look back on our relationships and we could have done better. We could have done things differently. And so I started looking back and I was just like, oh my gosh, I failed. Like, I didn't do this right, or I didn't do that right, or I could have treated her this way and not that way. Like I could have, and like, even she told me like, hey, you didn't fail. The marriage didn't fail. We changed as people, and it was just time to move on into a new chapter. We just weren't working anymore together. Nothing wrong with me, nothing wrong with her. Sure, we always could do things differently or have aspects of ourselves we want to change. And so I had to really move into a mode of not blaming myself for my marriage failing, but looking at the, hey, it's a new chapter. That's a chapter that closed. We're moving on to a new chapter. And, I even told her, it's just, and I mean it still, is that I would rather have her as one of my best friends than not at all. That's how much I care about her, because we have a kid together, and then I'm pretty much the father to my stepdaughter. So I'm dad, and so we're always going to have that connection. And it's just looking at that thing and realizing, okay, I didn't fail. My marriage didn't fail. It didn't work. people change. We change. It was time to move on. She wasn't being fully honest with herself about certain things. I wasn't. And we came to that mutual agreement that it's time to change things up. Time to do things differently. It hurts. Hurts like a son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Some days it's still hard. Some days I still have those moments of, my God, what did I do wrong? Should I have done this differently? Would she still be here? And that is so dangerous and so toxic, I'll tell you right now, that if you're going through a rough patch, if you've gone through a relationship, I think one of my friends posted this really good quote the other day, that, like, no matter, how much it hurts, there's part of you that still wants to be with that person.
Yeah.
And, like, we didn't part because of anything negative, because one person did something or hurt the other one. It just didn't work out. And so you're not doing anybody any good. You're definitely not doing yourself any good if you're dwelling on what you could have done. So look at what is and think of how you can be better, how you can, and you learn from it too. You learn from that going into a new relationship. So I don't know what that world looks like. That's daunting. And I don't even know what that new world of singleness really fully looks like yet.
I don't want to conflict with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to say, though, to some degree of introspection, looking back at what did go right and what did go wrong is healthy.
Absolutely. It's when you dwell on it.
That's
yes.
it. The fixating on it and just looking at it and just saying, I screwed up this, I screwed up that, I screwed up this, I screwed up that.
Exactly.
That's where it becomes
And that's
toxic.
what I was doing for a little while.
Yeah.
And, one of my really good friends, she went through a breakup and everything, and she just said to me one day, she was like, do you really want her back, or do you just want the idea of being with her? And that kind of was like, oh, man, you're right. Like, do I still... I still love her. I'm always going to love her. She's a part of me. Like, we had history together, a lot of experiences. We have kids together. And I still care about her. I always will care about her because, one, I'm empathetic. So I always care for someone's best interest. But at the same time, she's still my friend. I want to make sure that she's taken care of and that she's good because she's the mother of the kids. And, so we have that really... I think so far it's been a really good working relationship together of communicating and making sure the kids are taken care of and we're both there for them. Like you said, it's good to think about. It's good to be introspective because, look, there's times I was not a great husband. That's the bottom line. You look at it, and I think there's healing in being able to say that, and there's growth in being able to say, yeah, I can look back on some moments and realize, God, I was not a good husband.
I was a dick, man.
I was, and I could have done things differently. And I know that if it ever happens again, if I get married again, whatever the future looks like, I know that I can be aware of those things in the future. Right. Be aware of those patterns or those things that might lead to a negative experience or a negative outcome. So yeah, it's looking at that. It's failing. And I think that's the key in this. So as we get close to wrapping up the episode, like I said before, I always want to end the episode on a positive note with some positive thoughts and feedback. So listen, here's the bottom line. You're going to fail. Absolutely. I don't care who you are, you're going to fail in life. Failure is not the end. It's when you dwell on that failure, when you beat yourself up, or when you use that failure to hurt someone else, that's when it's dangerous. That's when it's toxic. You're going to fail. Learn to grow from your failures, from your shortcomings, because we're not perfect and we'll never be perfect. There's no such thing as perfection. But you can always continue to grow and learn from those things that don't go the way you wanted them to. Like your LO career. You didn't fail as an LO.
No.
But you've learned from that. You've learned a lot of great stuff. Even now, taking a lot of those skills you've learned, you've come back to the video world and the marketing world, and you've been able to take the knowledge and the skills that you have from that and improve the quality of our messaging, of our marketing from our video standpoint. So, it's grown in that way.
I want to add one more thing to that, and I think this is something that I read, probably 3 years ago on a random Reddit post or something like that. And it was this woman who shared something that her family did as a tradition almost on a daily basis. Around the dinner table, they got together as a family, and they talked about what they failed at that day, what they messed up, what they didn't do right. And instead of getting accusatory about it, instead of saying, here's what you could have done better, they kind of celebrated the failure. Yeah. They looked at it as the opportunity to do something new, as an opportunity to do something different the next time that situation came up. And so that would be, for me, that would be my challenge, is to say, don't dread the failure. Don't get locked into that fear of failure. Now, don't look for failure.
Yes. Yeah.
But take the opportunity to say, failure is inevitable, and when it comes, I'm going to celebrate it, and I'm going to learn from it.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing. So many of us get so scared of failing that we never take that next step, that we never take that leap. So don't be afraid to fail. We fail all the time. I fail more than most.
Clearly.
It seems like it. But in every single one of those failures, I learned something. I learned something about myself. I learned something about what I was doing. And I always made strides to improve myself through each one of those failures. And so do the same. Do the same.
Yeah, don't let fail be a 4-letter word that you're afraid of.
Ooh.
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 Put that on a sticker.
Just wrap that up and stick that right in your what?
Right in your ear. But no, seriously, don't let it become a word that you're afraid of. I've encountered so many people in life that are afraid of failure, and like you said, it paralyzes them.
Yeah.
You know what? Your relationship didn't work out. That's fine. You're not a terrible person because it didn't work.
Well, you might be.
You might be. But no, let's assume you're not. But let's assume you're not. Like, you're not a terrible person because something didn't go right. Here's the thing. If you did everything that you can do within your power to do the best you could do, to be the best you could be, and it still doesn't work, that's not on you.
Yeah.
That's on something else, and then don't blame the other stuff.
Yep.
Just look at it and say, okay, maybe it wasn't the right situation. Maybe it wasn't the right time, because one of my great mentors taught me this a long time ago, that the right thing at the wrong time is still the wrong thing.
Yes.
And that stuck with me throughout my life. I think, again, I said this on my first podcast, I think there's a reality in which my marriage could have worked. But it didn't. And that's the reality of it, is that things didn't work. And more as I go on, it's easier for me to not be hurt. Yeah. Not be sad about it, but look to the future. Okay, great. So here's the situation now. How can I be the best friend to the mother of my kids? How can I be the best father to my kids? How can I make sure that I'm present and in their lives? And how can they look at me and say, hey, Dad went through something really hard. When I come into a hardship, how can I be strong like him? How can I do things like he would do it? And be that role model, be that example. And so if you don't have kids, be that role model for your friends, for those close to you, and show them that, hey, don't get beaten down. Rise above it, press on, and make the best of it.
Don't be afraid of failure.
Don't be afraid. Thanks for tuning in. Guys, make sure you like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook. We're all over the place. Again, we appreciate all your support. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us on another episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm sure you'll be on more.
I'm sure I will.
Until next time, see you guys later.
Later.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Insights into a Soul. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to like and subscribe and to share it with your friends. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Insights into a Soul, on Instagram, @TornH, and if you have suggestions for future episodes or topics, or if you'd like to be on the podcast, contact us, insightsintoasoul@gmail.com.